The man casually summoned a goblin, and it instantly shattered the jaws of the top human adventurer team, simply because the boss that none of them could defeat together was killed in a single blow by this ordinary-looking goblin. Only then did they realize that the goblin summoner whom everyone had previously scorned was actually the sole possessor of a hidden class. The goblins he summoned were all at the highest level, but just 2.5 days ago I was still a little guy deep in debt. To make money, I put all my skill points into mining, as I was lamenting about when my own power fantasy story would begin. Suddenly, I dug up a high-grade healing stone. That instantly made me feel that learning mining was definitely the right choice. After all, this could be sold for 300,000. Just then, a group of people walked up to me. The girl leading them asked if, since I mined here every day, my mining skill level must be pretty high, right? During our conversation, I learned that they had been exploring a dungeon, but couldn't proceed because a huge ore blocked their path, so they wanted me to go with them to the dungeon and help clear the way. But I told them that aside from mining, all my other stats were really low. It'd be tough for me to go into the dungeon, I said. Hearing this, the dwarf in their group stepped forward, saying they'd clear out the monsters, and I just had to follow. I asked, "Don't you already have a dwarf? Can't Mr. Dwarf mine instead?" The dwarf got right up in my face, asking if I thought all dwarves could mine, or if I believed dwarves spent their whole lives mining. I thought, if I teamed with these people I could share experience points and if lucky, get high-grade ores. But then again, could I really make it out of that terrifying dungeon unscathed? Even though this is just a game where you can respawn infinitely, the sensations here are linked to reality. If something goes wrong, you could go into shock or even die for real. While I was lost in thought, that woman suddenly grabbed my hand and started tickling me, saying her ideal type was a man who could mine coolly with strong shoulders. I couldn't resist that kind of temptation, so I agreed on the spot. But not long after we entered the dungeon, I was already regretting it. Even though the monsters here were low level, my level was even lower than theirs. Just as a pack of wolves was about to pounce and tear me apart, that woman shouted for me not to move. Right after that, a wall of fire surged up in front of me, burning all those monsters to ashes. When it was over, she even came over and asked me considerately if I was hurt. I glanced at her username. Catherine, a level 39 mage. Once I snapped out of it, I quickly told her I was fine, though I was still in shock inside. I hadn't expected her to wipe out all those monsters in a single move. Catherine said it was good that I was okay, and told me to stay close to her and not wander too far. Hearing her say that, my face instantly flushed, and I wondered if my own pink romantic love story was about to begin. The man beside us also noticed the surprised look on my face. He told me there was nothing to be so surprised about, since this dungeon's level was nowhere near a match for their abilities. The only reason they came to this dungeon this time was to see what was behind that strange ore. Before, they had no choice but to pass it up. After all, no one wants to waste skill points on a labor-intensive skill like mining. Hearing what he said, my heart trembled a little, and I suddenly felt like I was being treated as a sucker. Unable to hold back, I stepped forward and asked him if he thought I didn't have any combat skills. After saying that, I pulled out my iron pickaxe and strode forward to start digging at the ore they had mentioned. As I dug, I couldn't help but resent myself for not having a single combat skill. While I was mining, the dwarf asked the man if the intel he bought from Baldy was reliable. If there wasn't anything special behind that ore, they'd be taking a huge loss this time. The man assured him it was definitely reliable. Otherwise, once they got out, he'd make Baldy pay for all the time they wasted in this lousy dungeon. Meanwhile, I realized this was the hardest ore I'd ever mined, but fortunately, my mining level was high enough that I quickly managed to crack it open. Finally, after all my effort, I smashed the ore to pieces, revealing a massive stone door behind it. Everyone was surprised. It turned out to be a hidden dungeon. This meant that as long as we cleared this dungeon, we could get special rewards and might even be able to change to a hidden class. I exclaimed that we were incredibly lucky. With this, our lives could turn around completely. In this dungeon, you can earn special rewards, and you might even be able to change your class to a hidden profession. I almost want to say we're incredibly lucky. This is basically a total turnaround in life. Catherine asked me something and I replied, "What does this have to do with you?" No sooner had I finished speaking than that man drew his sword and appeared behind me, slashing at my back. In an instant, I was left with barely any health. These people finally revealed their true colors. It turns out these despicable guys knew about the hidden dungeon from the very beginning, and they never intended to let me go in with them. After finally finishing me off, they walked through that stone door. I don't know how much time passed before I suddenly woke up and realized I was still in the dungeon. When I took out the healing stone I had dug up earlier, I found it had already shattered and disappeared. Only then did I understand. It was this thing that had revived me, but I couldn't feel happy at all because I had originally planned to sell it to pay off my debts. After getting up, I saw that the door to the hidden dungeon in front of me was still open, which meant the challenge inside wasn't over yet. Now that my healing stone had already been wasted, I couldn't just go back like this. So I decided to grit my teeth and take a chance. I leapt straight through the stone door, but I didn't notice there were stairs behind it. I tumbled down and lost 80 HP, leaving me with only 20 HP left, once again in a critical state. At this moment, the system popped up a notification saying this place was called the Goblin Temple. After getting up, I saw a massive goblin statue standing before me. I thought to myself, these little goblins that are everywhere are actually sitting on a throne here. Looks like the difficulty of this hidden dungeon isn't all that high after all. Just as I was circling around the statue looking for traces of the others, something suddenly bumped into me. Looking down, I realized it was actually that dwarf from before, which made me wonder what on earth was going on. Could it be that even a high-level team like theirs can't handle goblins? At that moment, the dwarf on the ground sent a message asking me to revive him. I replied that I didn't have any resurrection skills either. At this moment, I also understood why this guy wasn't pressing the revive button. He must have been afraid of missing out on this hidden dungeon, since only a player's skill can revive him on the spot. If he clicks the revive button, he'll return to the starting point. Suddenly, a warning popped up on my panel saying that this was a high-difficulty dungeon and urging me to leave immediately. Before I could finish reading, I heard a loud crash behind me. When I turned around, I saw that the man from earlier was being tightly gripped by a pair of huge hands, and Catherine was also pinned underfoot, barely alive. Looking up, I realized that this monster named Geiger had actually reached level 80. Wasn't this supposed to be the Goblin Temple? How could a monster like this appear here? Before I could finish thinking, he brought that man up to his mouth and took a huge bite while spinning rapidly. The sight of it almost made me throw up. Although the game has safety mechanisms so that even if you're hurt by low-level or same-level monsters, the pain isn't too bad. It's a whole different story if you're attacked by a monster dozens of levels higher. Pain and memories don't disappear when your character is revived. Instead, they directly affect the player's brain. In severe cases, this can even lead to brain death, which is an irreversible form of shock. After hearing Catherine's cries, I asked what she expected me to use to save her and told her to stop calling for me. With that, I tiptoed and quietly turned, ready to escape this place. They can't blame me, after all, they abandoned me first. Besides, I have no combat ability and can't help anyway, so I need to make sure I survive. Halfway through my escape, I suddenly received a system notification saying that the Goblin King could empathize with someone as weak and despicable as me. I was completely baffled when I saw this. Then I looked again at the Goblin statue in front of me and asked it, "Do you think I want to be like this? Do you think I'm willing to be a coward? If I had enough ability, I wouldn't have to run away. Because of the debt left by parents I've never even met, I've never been able to do what I want. I want to be like everyone else, fighting monsters with cool skills, not just digging up rocks. What right do you have to call me weak and despicable? I get ignored by people in the real world, and I'm ignored in the game too. Now even a goblin can relate to me?" Finally, frustrated and angry, I said, "So what if I'm just a goblin? What does it matter?" As soon as I said that, the system notified me that I was now an honorary goblin. It also said that goblins would be ready to help me at any time, and then a window popped up saying I had met the requirements to unlock a hidden class, asking if I wanted to change my class to Goblin Summoner. I never expected this thing to actually be a hidden class. So just now, I obtained a skill called Summon Goblin. Although it made quite a scene, the goblin that appeared doesn't seem any different from an ordinary goblin. But that's fine. It's the perfect opportunity to use this guy as bait so I can make my escape. I turned around and pointed at the monster, ordering the goblin to fight. As soon as it received the command, it immediately raised its weapon and entered battle mode. Sure enough, when the monster saw the goblin, it switched its target of attack. Seeing that my plan had worked, I turned around and prepared to run away. But to my surprise, as the goblin swung the large wooden club in its hand, it instantly killed that level 80 monster. I was so shocked that I lost control of my muscles, my thoughts interrupted by the sudden turn of events, and in the silence, every sound seemed especially clear. Right after that, my interface started popping up with notifications of rapidly increasing experience points, and I even gained 2 new skills, feeding the goblin and taking the goblin for a walk. When the goblin landed, I also got a notification that my summoned creature's experience had increased, but it seemed like its level bar was already maxed out and couldn't go any higher. Then, as I stared at this goblin, I couldn't help but marvel at how absurd it was. Such a tiny, ugly, short, and utterly ordinary little creature was actually max level. Meanwhile, when Catherine was trampled to death just now, her real body in the real world also felt that excruciating pain. The servant beside her hurried over to check on her, and when she removed the device, she was stunned by what she saw. Her young lady had already gone into irreversible shock. Back in the dungeon, after discovering that this little guy was max level, I had her take me along to farm monsters. As she kept killing monsters in the dungeon, my level also shot up rapidly, one after another. I just followed behind, picking up the magic stones that dropped, and only after my inventory was full did I tell the goblin to stop. By then, I had reached level 31, and I hadn't even had time to allocate the 26 attribute points I'd gained. Logically, defeating Geiger should have counted as clearing the hidden dungeon, but since all my teammates who were supposed to protect me had been killed, I had no way to return on my own except by dying. But who would have thought that this guy would actually sweep through the entire mine dungeon? And I still couldn't check any of his other information. It made me start to wonder if he was some kind of bug. But none of that really mattered to me anymore. If he really was a bug, then I'd better make the most of it before they fix it. After logging out of the game, I went straight to the bank. Because this game is so influential, you can directly exchange in-game items for cash at the bank. After selling everything I'd picked up, I ended up with over 90,000. Then I said I'd also sell the Geiger hide and heart I'd obtained. When the teller entered those 2 items to process the transaction, their pupils instantly dilated and they froze on the spot, then hurriedly got up to find the branch manager. After the branch manager arrived, he took me to a VIP room. I asked him why he wanted to see me. I just wanted to exchange those items for cash. The branch manager replied that he wanted to recommend some excellent financial products to me, since it would be a waste to just let so much money sit idle. I said I'd only made a little over 100,000. It shouldn't be enough to trouble someone like the branch manager. The manager thought I already knew the value of the Geiger hide and heart. So he immediately started pitching products to me. But when he realized I didn't know, he told me, at today's market price, these 2 items could sell for 230 million. When I heard that number, my whole body froze like a statue, with only my eyes betraying the raging waves inside. When I returned to the game, I hugged the goblin and thanked him profusely. Thanks to him, I finally paid off 1/10 of my debt. Who says my goblin is ugly? He's clearly so. But as I said that, I suddenly stopped, because I just couldn't bring myself to say something so insincere. But right then, something happened that gave me a massive headache. The problem was, I couldn't interact with this guy's summoning, which meant I couldn't recall him. Walking down the street with him drew a lot of unwanted attention. People around started talking as soon as they saw us. That's rare. Why is there a goblin wandering around the village? Could it be someone's summoned creature? It's just so ugly. How could there be such an ugly creature? Just as I was about to hurry out of the village with him, I suddenly bumped into someone coming from the opposite direction. This burly man drew his sword and said, "Why is there a goblin here?" The people around immediately recognized him. Wasn't this Patton, the Annihilator from the Abaddon Guild? When I heard that, monster, but I was still a step too late. By this time, Patton's broadsword had already struck the goblin, but the goblin didn't lose a single drop of blood. When the goblin counterattacked, however, it smashed his health bar into the negatives with a single club swing. Fortunately, there's a rule in the village. To prevent high-level players from completely overwhelming others, the pain can't exceed the level that would make someone pass out. When the people around saw that the goblin had actually killed someone, the place instantly erupted into chaos, and I quickly stopped moving forward and retreated. If everyone found out at this moment that this guy was my summoned beast, I'd be done for. After learning that Patton had been killed by a monster, members of their guild quickly rushed to the scene. Now things have gotten complicated. Although my goblin can't speak, it's still a big headache if it kills everyone on the other side. To prevent the situation from getting any worse, I decided to step forward and said that I would take care of this goblin myself. But this person didn't appreciate it at all, and even threatened that if I interfered again, they'd kill me along with it. Just as I was still trying to reason with them, I didn't notice that the goblin beside me threw a stone at the other side, instantly killing a level 28 assassin. The next second, members of their guild dashed toward the goblin. For their safety, I had no choice but to escape with the goblin. After running into a small alley, an old man suddenly appeared, opened a door, and told me to come in quickly to take shelter. Thinking I was finally saved, I hurried inside, but to my surprise, as soon as I entered, the old man pulled out a weapon, ready to beat me to death. I had barely taken a few steps outside when my view was blocked by a system notification. It said that my clumsy tactic of first pretending to be weak in front of the enemy and then launching a sneak attack had deeply impressed the Goblin King, and I was rewarded with 1 goblin point. When I saw that he called me clumsy again, I stopped running away. I remembered that last time he said I was weak and despicable, and now he's outright calling me clumsy. Weren't those people who pulled me into their team and abandoned me after using me the real clumsy ones? I told the goblins behind me to listen up. From now on, we will no longer be trampled on as weaklings. Next, we're going to crush those who want to bully us. At this moment, the guild members were still relentlessly chasing us from behind. In the scene, a woman named Jixian asked Shadow Yuni in confusion, "Is it really necessary to make such a big deal out of dealing with some nobody?" Yunhee told her not to let her guard down, saying that Goblin is a bit different. Although Patton is the weakest among us, he still shouldn't have been killed in a single blow by the other side. When they were about to catch up to me, they heard a miserable scream, and then saw the corpse of that old guy from earlier flying over. Immediately after, Yuni suddenly felt a chill run down his back. In the next second, as he dodged and swung his blade behind him, he saw that it only dealt 0 damage to the goblin. He gasped sharply, as if the icy air had stabbed his heart and lungs, and instantly stopped breathing. It was only then that he realized the string of damage numbers the goblin had caused earlier with the stones was not his imagination. But the goblin didn't give him any time to react. It swung its club and leapt right over his head, but just as it was about to strike him, an arrow knocked it off course. Still shaken, he looked at himself in disbelief. He was still alive. Jihyun shouted at him, asking what he was standing there for. Did he plan on dying at the hands of a goblin? Snapping back to his senses, Yoonhyuk looked ahead and pondered. He never believed a single goblin could deal such high damage, so he was convinced someone must be pulling tricks behind the scenes. With that thought, he gripped his dual blades tightly and began to unleash the assassin's ultimate skill, Malice. Although this skill would reduce his movement speed by 90%, all of his subsequent attacks would become critical hits. Behind him, Jihyun asked what he was planning to do now. Was he really going to use such a skill just to deal with a single goblin? Trying to act tough, Yoonhyuk replied that this was just his normal attack. Jihyun just silently stared at the amount of mana he had just used, thinking to herself, since when does a normal attack consume half your mana? To be safe, he used another skill to boost his attack power. At this point, Jihyun could only compromise, hoping that no one else would witness this scene. Then she stood up and began to gather energy for her own ultimate move. This skill can remove slow effects from all characters within its range, making it a perfect combo with Yoonhyuk's abilities. Right now, Yoonhyuk felt incredibly powerful, but after slashing with his blade, he still failed to inflict any damage on the goblin. His first reaction was to doubt his own senses, unable to accept the reality before him, while behind him, he saw the goblin smiling kindly.